We are back. I know we signed off not hours ago, but when big news happens, come here and we will explain it. Yes, both the Tish James and the James Comey complaints have been dismissed without prejudice. And we're going to explain what that means in just a moment. But folks, this is the first two major retaliatory cases that have crumbled sooner than anyone could have imagined, within weeks of them being filed. So we are going to tell you everything you need to know. For those of you just joining us, yes, Tish James and James Comey's case have been dismissed without prejudice, and you contrarians had a lot to do with it, and we're going to tell you that story in just a moment. So let's do some scene setting. Donald Trump told Pam Bondi in an infamous direct message that didn't go directly, that went broadly. Indict these people. Go after them now. Get those.
Dictator dunce class. He sent his DM the most sensitive possible evidence of wrongdoing accidentally on social media.
Exactly. So they filed these two lawsuits. Remember, James Comey's lawsuit based upon a non-lie. The lie that they said was, in testifying in 2020, he said, "I stand by my previous testimony." That cannot be a lie because he was standing by his previous testimony. So the case is based on nonsense. Be that as it may, it was the result of a complaint filed by Lindsay Halligan, and hence the problem and the basis for the dismissal. Norm, why were both cases dismissed, and what does Lindsay Halligan have to do with it?
The Tish James case is an equally absurd assertion of mortgage fraud. Look, Jen, legitimate prosecutors, including the initial U.S. attorney who was installed, Eric Siebert, in the Virginia U.S. Attorney's Office to bring this case, refused on both James and Comey. Trump unceremoniously yanked Siebert out of there and installed Lindsay Halligan, who'd never been before a grand jury in her life. The problem is that federal law applies. Donald Trump only gets to put in a U.S. attorney in the first 120 days. And the 120 days had run here. So when he put in Lindsay Halligan, it was contrary to the federal statute and, as Judge Curry pointed out, also to the Constitution, which provides for the advice and consent of the Senate on appointments of officers like U.S. attorneys. So there's both a statutory and a constitutional basis for this.
And friends, everyone who is listening, who is a paid subscriber, had something to do with it, because the origin of that idea that you could challenge someone who was appointed beyond the 120 days, guess where it came from? It came from Norm and friends, and guess who has helped fund that? That is you. So everyone who is a paid subscriber, raise your hand. This is part of your doing, folks. Norm, the judge in both cases, these were consolidated, separate complaints, but on this issue, it's a similar issue because Lindsay Halligan is, in fact, currently occupying the seat of U.S. attorney. She is not the U.S. attorney. She is occupying that seat. Why did the judge dismiss without prejudice? What does that mean?
Yeah, Jen, it goes back to that theory that the Contrarians helped stimulate. With your support, friends, we filed the first test case with wonderful colleagues, including at Abby Lowell and his colleagues in Lowell and Associates. And in that first case, we knocked out Alina Habba, you'll remember, in New Jersey on a similar theory. But these challenges have to be done within a constitutional and statutory context. And Judge Curry said, I'm looking to the Supreme Court jurisprudence on these matters. And those cases that have been previously dismissed. They're not exactly on all fours, but she found a couple of comparable cases. In those prior cases, the remedy is send yourself back to the moment before the unconstitutional, unauthorized officer, whether it's Alina Habba or Lindsay Halligan or any of the other unqualified U.S. attorneys, because this theory that Abby and colleagues and I tested in New Jersey has been used all over the country. You go back to the moment before. At that moment, there was no prejudice. Now, and what prejudice means is the door is slammed. You don't get a do-over. But here's the problem. In the Comey case, at least, the do-over is going to be complicated because the statutes of limitation have run. Too much time has lapsed. So now there's going to be a big fight about whether when you go back, can you go back to that moment? There'll be a separate statute of limitations fight. And Jen and I were just saying this morning, these cases are like a checklist of how not to prosecute a criminal case. It's kind of what you would expect if the president DMs his attorney general to hire an insurance lawyer whose only qualification is loyalty to him.
Right.
There's so many mistakes. So there's literally dozens of other grounds for dismissal with prejudice.
So,
I do not think these cases are going to be successful in the end of the day.
Exactly. Friends, if you're just joining us for the big news, both the Comey indictment and the Tish James indictment have been dismissed, but without prejudice. They're going to have to come back on a step 2. In Comey's case, he has all of those other reasons for dismissing the case. There was arguably misconduct within the grand jury room. There was arguably a Fourth Amendment violation in the use of searched materials. Arguably, there was invasion of attorney-client privilege. And of course, the underlying non-lie. So he's got a whole list of them, plus now the statute of limitations. So remember, 2 time periods. One is 120 days that the U.S. attorney could be appointed by the president. If not, the attorneys the U.S. attorney gets appointed by the judges. And by the way, they would never have appointed this woman. They would never have appointed someone who would have brought the case. And that's why the statute of limitations may be so critical. So there's that time limit. And then there's the statute of limitations, which is 5 years, as it is for most criminal cases. And remember, they were racing to get in under the wire. And this is what happened when you race, you make mistakes. Tish James does not have a statute of limitations problem, Norm, but she has a whole list of other issues that she's going to bring. So what's next? Give us the next 30, 60, 90 days of these cases.
Well, what you're going to see next is a series of other legal motions, many of which have already been made. Some are coming, are going to be filed. There'll be back and forth in the briefing, there'll be hearings, and there'll be more decisions. Jan, the biggest issue that I would look for is selective and vindictive prosecution. This is totally separate than Lindsay Halligan's statutory and constitutional invalid appointment. Judge Curry wrote about that. She said, if the government's position is right, any citizen could be called in off the street to charge a grand jury. Frankly, I think a random person off the street could have done a better job than Lindsay Halligan did in this grand jury. The next thing that you're gonna get is next major bombshell is going to be, I believe these were selective and vindictive prosecutions. We have that evidence of Trump accidentally sending his DM, his direct message, as a Truth Social posting to the entire world, demanding the prosecution, irrespective of the merits, of his political enemies, Comey, James, and Schiff. The court is not going to allow that under these circumstances. Those motions are very hard to win. But if you can't win here, they don't have any meaning. And Contrarians, your help wasn't only in developing these theories. With your support, we've filed legal briefs on Halligan's invalid appointment from former judges of both parties and former prosecutors, and legal briefs on selective and vindictive prosecution for the court in these cases. And I think that with your help and support, Comey and James are going to get these cases knocked out. The same way. Now Jen, while we're sitting here, he started going after Mark Kelly and the other members of Congress who simply said to military service members, follow the law. So Trump's going to continue to violate the Constitution and laws, and you're going to continue to see massive pushback against
Exactly. 2 questions that were asked in the chat. We answer them. You come, we answer them. First, does this dismissal mean that he can still rule on the vindictive prosecution? Yes. These judges are going to make rulings on all of these issues, because when it goes up to appeal, the appeals court doesn't like one reason, there'll be another reason there. So yes, there will be a ruling on the vindictive prosecution. The other was, can Lindsay Halligan be disbarred? That is a matter for the state bar in which she has been authorized to practice law. I don't know which state that was, frankly. DC has reciprocity for many of these states. But yes, that has to be brought before the state bar.
She's a Florida barred lawyer. But Jan, she's subject to discipline by DOJ. And there's still a vestige of independence because you have the DOJ Inspector General. Remember, friends, the rule of law has been attacked and degraded by Donald Trump, but it hasn't been destroyed. Last week, we learned that the people investigating Adam Schiff are themselves under investigation for possible wrongdoing. Well, guess who made it possible for me and my colleagues to file a complaint against Lindsay Halligan on ethics grounds with DOJ? You did, Contrarians.
Absolutely.
That's why we're giving thanks for you.
Absolutely. So just to wrap up, friends, both the indictment of James Comey and the indictment of Tish James have been thrown out, dismissed, but without prejudice. In James Comey's case, they're going to come back with a statute of limitations argument on top of all their other cases. Tish James is going to come back with her list of motions that she has already made. And I think, friends, this is a big day, a big win. We thank you on this Thanksgiving special edition. And listen, if anybody else gets dismissed in the next 24, 48 hours, we'll be back again. But this is good enough. Dianu, this is good enough for now.
So just as we hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving week, we're giving thanks in addition to all of you, the resilience of our Constitution, our rule of law, our wonderful federal judges, Republican and Democratic appointed ones alike have been pushing back when there's illegality like this. And then, Jen, it will be very interesting to see. Jen is right, because this is a dismissal without prejudice. These other motions are still going to have life. We are likely going to see them resolved. Jen, I think it will be very interesting as we see the judges and the parties this week. The judges may say, or the parties may say, or everybody agree, let's keep going. Or they may say, the cases have been dismissed. There is no more criminal case. So we'll take a beat while this issue is resolved first. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But as of now, Comey and James has already issued a statement saying how grateful she is. She's giving thanks, and we're giving thanks for all of you. And of course, any excuse when I can come back on air with Jen and celebrate a victory for the rule of law. We're grateful for that. Happy Thanksgiving, friends.
Happy Thanksgiving, friends. Take the good news to the Thanksgiving dinner. Take care. We'll see you soon.